Frederick Fasehun is dead, but Nigeria's history won't be written without mentioning the late icon.
Yes, indeed, and his venture into politics to form the Oodua People's Congress, OPC, is ever indelible in the annals of Nigeria's, or will forever be in the annals of Nigeria's history. Now, this report captures the life and times of the late Dr. Frederick Fasehun.
Dr. Frederick Fasehun, born in Ondo City, is a Nigerian medical doctor, hotel owner, and founder of the Oodua People's Congress, the OPC. He studied science at Blackburn College and furthered his education at Aberdeen University College of Medicine. Dr. Fasehun also studied at the Liverpool Postgraduate School, after which he had a fellowship at the Royal College of Surgeons. In 1976, he studied acupuncture in China under a joint World Health Organization (WHO) and United Nations Development Scholarship Program. Venturing into politics, Dr. Fasehun formed the OPC to actualize the annulled mandate of Chief Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola, who won the June 12, 1993 presidential election, but was barred from taking office. He was a medical doctor and hotel owner and was responsible for the recent revival of the Unity Party of Nigeria, a party formed by the late sage Chief Obafemi Awolowo in 1970s. His political activism, especially his agitation for the restoration of the nation's botched Third Republic, led to his imprisonment for 19 months from December 1996 and June 1998 under the military ruler General Sani Abacha. He was released 18 days after Abacha's death.
You have very fertile imagination. I didn't do a thing like that. Chief Falai was here yesterday. Chief Falai went to Zachary Bill to appeal to him to release me from the oven. From the oven, he kept me. And he made a remark. Chief Falai said, this man is an aged man and he might die in that place. And Zachary Bill replied, Chief Olufalai and Mr. Osayeme, that if he died, an autopsy would be carried out and a verdict of misadventure would be given.
He died at the intensive care unit of the Lagos State University Teaching Hospital, Asuthi-Keja, Lagos, where he had been on admission for about 4 days. Theophilus Ilama, TVC News, Lagos.
All right, joining us from London is an activist and social commentator, Kayode Ogundamisi. Kayode, good morning. It's good to have you join us right now.
Thank you.
It's quite devastating to not just those who know late Dr. Fasehun, but Nigerians who have read and understood his contribution, not just even at the level of OPC, but groomed a well-renowned medical doctor. Now, talk to us about when you knew him. What really attracted you to him when you first met him?
First, let me say great sympathy to the family of Dr. Fasehun and to Nigeria as a country. A lot of people just only remember Dr. Fasehun with the OPC, but he transcends the OPC. My first interaction with him was during the pro-democracy movement when we were fighting for the enthronement of civilian rule against the military. Dr. Fasehun would provide accommodation in his house for most people the military then would call dissidents. He would organize meetings. He would lead a lot of conversations about how we need to go forward to enthrone democracy in Nigeria, and he sacrificed so much. His Best Hope Hospital in Mushin, an area of Lagos State, and his hotel, Century Hotel, was turned away from commercial activities into a place where almost everyone from across Nigeria had to meet to plan strategies on how to enthrone democracy in Nigeria. He sacrificed so much for the country.
Would it be unfair to describe him as a Yoruba nationalist, which is just one of the ways that he's been described? I mean, almost limiting him to the Yoruba ethnic group or race, if you like. I mean, how do you think history would record his contributions to, nationhood?
I think I will use Dr. Fasehun's words to answer your question. When I left university as a student activist, I was a pan-Nigerian nationalist, so to say. And during the pro-democracy movement, I saw Nigeria just from the prism of a country until Dr. Fasehun invited me to the convention of the OPC to contest for the position of National Secretary General in Ibadan. And I asked him, why Yoruba? And he said, look, you can only be a good Nigeria if you're a good Yoruba. You can only be a good Nigeria if you're a good Igbo or you're a good Hausa person. And that we should start looking at ourselves and recognizing the diversity in our country, that the strength is in that diversity. And we should stop calling people who identify with their race as tribalists. Dr. Fasehun's method of campaign was different from the current campaign where we see people putting their tribe over every other tribe. It's equality of all tribes and justice for all, but recognizing the fact that you are first and foremost who you are from your community before you are a Nigerian, and it is that diversity that makes the building block of our great country, Nigeria. The OPC was an accident of history. It was an organization that came about to fight a repressive military dictatorship, one of the worst military dictatorship in Africa, that of General Abacha. And the OPC was formed as an answer to the annulment of the June 12 presidential election that got votes from across Nigeria. Remember, Chief MKO Abiola won even in Kano State, and he was denied that mandate. So he was a nationalist, but a nationalist that recognized the diversity of our country.
All right, we have joining us from our Abuja studio a spokesman of the Pan-Yoruba Social-Cultural Group, Afenifere. Now, Yinka Odumakin joins us right now. Yinka, good morning. It's good to have you join us on the program right now. I know that you have worked closely and understand the man, Dr. Frederick Fasehun. You know him one-on-one. You understand his philosophy and know what he stood for, as the case may be. What would you say will be his biggest legacy for Nigerians who didn't have the opportunity to work closely with him or who didn't really know him on one-on-one? What would be his biggest legacy?
Dr. Fasehun was a great man, was a great soul. Was quite a soft-spoken man with a lot of fire in his belly. He was, at a point, a presidential candidate who wanted to govern Nigeria. But I think his greatest legacy was the consistency, standing firm on principles, defending all that was right and just. He was a man that was committed to social justice, to equality, to development, and he was very, very outspoken man. His greatest legacy, like I said, is that he was a consistent man fighting for egalitarianism and ensuring that he stood firmly on his beliefs. And I think that was a great legacy that the young generation should learn, to be known for something, to stand for something and fight for what you believe is right. That was Dr. Fasehun for time.
And of course, let me remain with you, Yinka Odumakin. His non-violent stance seemed to have cost him a lot in terms of the control or leadership of the Oodua People's Congress that led to a splinter group headed by the Ààrẹ Ọ̀nà Kakanfò now, who is Gani Adams. What do you think about his non-violent stance? How does it pay off, or how did it pay off?
Well, I think the question of disagreement within the OPC should be taken as part of the things that happen in every mass movement. When you have a big organization like OPC with millions of members, you are bound to have disagreements. But by and large, I think that himself and Ààrẹ Ọ̀nà Kakanfò now, eventually they settled, and I think they agreed that at the point that, well, Dr. Fasehun remained the founder of OPC, while Gani Adams then should be national coordinator. And I think that, yes, it was a tested period for the organization for the Yoruba nation, but ultimately, I mean, it was a testimony, to the sagacity of these great men that this eventually made up and found a peaceful way to live together. But by and large, I think that Dr. Fasehun was a man that believed in social justice, and he pursued it. And yes, people ascribe all kind of things to OPC. But those of us who are close to him, we know quite clearly that he did all he could to ensure that they contain some of the things that people will think want to say. Oh, that okay, there are excesses here and there. I think the greatest legacy has left, like I said, is that it has led a big mass movement that will live forever. And I think managing such within our environment was a testimony to the organizational ability and to the capacity and capability to put men and women together in their millions.
All right, let me bring Kayode joining us from London back in here. Now, Dr. Fasehun was, if you put it, if you compare him to an average situation in Nigeria, you would say he was a wealthy man. He was a very comfortable man, a medical doctor who has, gotten to the height of medicine and even life and wealth and comfort and all of that. But he decided to leave all that to live for the average and common man and fighting. What really was responsible for him denouncing that comfort and being up there to coming down to the level of Nigerians and standing for people and for Nigerians, and especially from the Southwest?
I think it was his passion for his community. And Dr. Fasehun, if you're close to him, will tell you that his wealth could not have been possible without his people. And for several times, sometimes there was a time I said to him, why don't we have a secretariat outside of Best Hospital or Century Hotel? And he would say, look, if you cannot sacrifice your own personal belonging, then there's no point being in the struggle. And one of the other things is that a lot of things people did not know, that this man carried a pain for 50 years. He had ailments for 50 years, and it was just to the glory of God that he was able to clock 83. And despite this ailment that he kept to himself, and he kept struggling, he kept attending hospital, going to hospital treatment, he was still able to stand his course. And one of the major legacy, Yinka would agree with me, was that Dr. Fasehun was never afraid for anyone to disagree with him. Those of us who were in his executive will take a certain position. He would insist on his own position. In that executive, you had Dr. Bekor and some Kuti, who has now passed away, one of the great leaders. And Fasehun was never afraid to work alone. And he has given birth to a lot of leaders within the Yoruba community, more than any other Yoruba leader, where they can stand there, take their own stands, and be on their own and say, look, we would rather be in the minority at this point, and history will vindicate us. So it's sacrificial, example of being able to be sacrificial for his community is something that should be shared by all Nigerians.
Absolutely, and that's a question I'd like to ask Yinka Odumakin as to what, the present-day leaders and leaders of the future can actually learn from what has been described as, his humble mien and, of course, his modesty. I mean, he died in a Nigerian hospital at Lasuf. He could have chosen to be flown abroad and all of that. And it's interesting to even hear from Kayode that he had this ailment, like a thorn in the flesh, if you like, for up to 50 years. And he still managed to, trudge on. Yinka Odumakin.
Yeah, the question?
Yes, please. My question to you, as in what our leaders can actually learn from his modesty and his, his simplicity, and the fact that he actually,
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think that, like I just said, that Dr. Fasehun has left some imprints which we should not just ignore. That he died in Nigeria. Somebody has said that Nigeria has become a cemetery for Nigerian leaders. They go abroad, then they die, and they bring their corpse back. But he lived here among his people. Like we said, he came down to the level of the ordinary people to organize artisans. I mean, a medical doctor, first-class medical doctor, organizing people, artisans, and the rest of them was a hallmark of a great man who would come down to mix with his people. And the way he ended it shows clearly that it was for this country, he believed in this country, and I think also good to know that he lived with diabetes for 50 years. It's also a lesson to people that people have to learn how to manage their debt, their health. That he carried such a sickness for 50 years and was doing all that he did shows clearly that he was able to balance between his personal life, his public life, his health, and none suffered. That he lived up to the right age of 83 years.
Yeah.
Showed how much he cared for his
Okay.
health, as much as he cared for his community, for his people.
All right, thank you so much, Yinka Odumakin and Kayode Ogundamisi, for talking to us about the life and times of Dr. Frederick Fasehun, who, incidentally, not many people actually know that he set up the first acupuncture center right here in Lagos. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, moving on very quickly.